Welcome in, everybody, to another edition of the Average Joe's Sports Talk Saturday morning recap show. Caleb Brooks, Bo Starkey here with you this week. No Corey LaBounty. He's going to be calling the Alabama A&M and Jackson State football game later on this afternoon. So Corey has some other obligations he's got to get to. For those that don't know what Corey does a lot of different stuff. I mean, on Friday nights, he's calling the Mobile city school system. They have their own broadcast that goes out on Facebook and goes all over Mobile down there. They actually do a really good job with that broadcast down there. It looks like a regular TV broadcast, multiple cameras, multiple different views, replays, all of that. Corey has his own radio show that he does from 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock down in Mobile, Monday through Friday. And then also gets asked to go and do some college football games as well as a broadcaster. And so it shows you're getting a professional with Corey when he's on here with us. But due to him being as successful as he is as a broadcaster, it means that he won't be with us every single Saturday, unfortunately. And, this is one of those Saturdays. He's got some other obligations. Should be a fun game with Alabama A&M and Jackson State for him to go do. But, Bo, we got a lot of fun matchups from last night and Thursday night to talk about. And a big week. And I heard you kind of say it on your show last night there on the final drive that this is the week that we really kind of start separating things and really figuring out, who's going to be, region champs, who's going to be competing for a region championship here in a couple of weeks when they meet at the end of the season, and which teams are going to really have their work cut out for them to even get into the postseason after last night.
Yeah, it's a very interesting week, man, to say the least. And I noticed several what on paper would be called upsets that happened. A lot of region movement in North Alabama, and then as you said, I think Tara Dome, the old school term, cream rising to the top's also happening. Some teams are just stepping on the pedal and getting some momentum heading downhill, heading into the playoffs. Is what looks like is what's happening as well.
What game? I know you went to a game last night for just a little bit before your show.
Did you hear that story? Did you hear that story?
I don't think I heard the whole story.
This is Jim Carrey-esque right here, buddy. So I was talking to Justin Thrasher and Heath Loki, the play-by-play guys at Scottsboro. And, Scottsboro had been rolling all year, averaging 50 points a game. Well, they're playing Guntersville. This is the top 10 matchup in 5A. So Thrasher, I talked to him on Wednesday. And he's like, man, I can't wait for you to come up, man. Because I told him I was coming to this game. He's like, yeah, dude. He said, come up. When you come up, just come hop on the broadcast with us as soon as you get there. He said, just come on up to the press box. And I was like, all right, man. So I put Alex in the car with me. And those who don't know, Alex is my exchange student from Spain. He lives here with me. And we hop in the car and we drive 1 hour and 6 minutes to Scottsboro, Alabama. And I pull up and I go, just like Jim Carrey. Whenever Jeff Daniels wakes up from his nap, been sleeping all night, and he thinks they're in the Rocky Mountains, but they're in Nebraska. He goes, gee, John Denver's full of you-know-what. He said, I thought the Rocky Mountains would be a little more rockier than this. Well, I pull up to Scottsboro High School. I was like, man, I thought this place would be packed out. I don't even see the lights. And then I went, they're at Guntersville. Yep, that's awesome.
Wow.
I looked at my phone. Sure enough, they're at Guntersville. And it's, from Guntersville to Scottsboro's, 40 minutes. I didn't have time to drive there.
Yeah.
And even then drive back to Fort Payne is impossible. So I came back through Rainsville on my way to Fort Payne and watched Hoax Bluff and Plainview, which may have been godsend because as soon as, you got to see, it was their homecoming. So I got pictures of their homecoming court and got to see Coach Jeremy Pruitt coach, his dad coach. And also got to see Hoax Bluff and Mike Robertson coach. So it was a special night.
That reminds me of last year. Daveville was playing Beulah. They just played Beulah last night, but they played Beulah at home last year. And I'm sitting up in the booth getting ready to call the game. My partner Chris hadn't shown up, and normally he beats me to the field on a Friday night. About 6:40 rolls around, and I call him. I go, hey, man, where are you at? And he goes, I'm about to pull up. He pulls up, and he's at Beulah, not at Daveville last year. And that's about a 45-minute drive from Beulah to Daveville. So I started the game. I did the whole first quarter without Chris on the broadcast with me, and he had to drive up from Beulah all the way up to Daveville to go do the game. And so he missed the whole first quarter and went to the wrong place. And it sucks for him because he works up in Alex City. So he works Alex City, lives in Auburn, so he drove all the way back to Auburn and down to Beulah, which
Mm,
is about 20 minutes below Auburn, then had to drive back up to Dadeville and then go back home after the game. So
my
lot of
God.
wasted driving for him. So hey, at least you're not the only one that has a story like that where they got mixed up. And hey, look, sometimes the
Dude,
schedules doesn't show the right stuff because a lot of people thought that that Thompson Clay Central game or Clay Chalkville game was going to be at Clay Chalkville last week. That's what a lot of
yep.
sites had and all that out there. And the game was at Thompson for the second year in a
And,
row. So
and then this week I was talking to Rico Jackson. I was like, man, I'm coming down to see you guys Thursday. He's like, would y'all come to practice? And I was like, well, yeah. And he goes, bro, our game's on Friday. And he said, why does people keep telling me it's on Thursday? I was like, like the historical site had it on Thursday.
yeah,
We actually messaged them. Hey, Reggie actually messaged them and said, hey, man, this game's on Friday because there was tons and tons of people who were hitting them up saying it was on Thursday.
I'll tell you though, that's a credit to that AHS FHS site
Oh,
though.
my God.
That I mean,
Fantastic.
they're kind of the end all be all of people getting their information now for
Dude,
Alabama high school sports. And
I don't know what they're getting for that site or how they get paid but whatever it is, somebody needs to come in there and be an overall sponsor for them for hundreds of thousands. And
yeah,
I'm not joking.
it ain't enough. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
I'm
I
not
mean,
talking about thousands. I'm talking about hundreds of thousands.
we wouldn't be able to do the stuff that we do without them. I mean,
No,
seriously, without their
no.
site, without the information, without the work they've put in to get all the stuff. I mean, we wouldn't be able to do what we do each and every week. I mean, what we get for Road to the Blue Map every week comes from that site, the results, the all that. I mean, we have to use that site to get everything, and it's got all the information right there. So it's awesome, but it also just shows. I mean, if they have one little slip up, it can affect everything because that's what everybody's using. So it's a credit to
Yeah, and
them for building that up.
it's funny, like they may have one little slip up like that, and everybody's like, "Oh, they're terrible." And I'm like, "Bro, do you understand
Yeah.
the trillions of things that they've got right on here and the work these guys have put in? I'll take that one little slip up
Yeah, I
any
mean
day of the
they got
week."
stuff dating back to the 50s that's
Oh, it's
correct on
unbelievable.
there. Yeah,
Yeah,
so it's incredible. Well, before we get into the scores, want to talk a little bit about our sponsor of this episode, the Henry House up there in Guntersville, a luxury vacation rental and event space. In 1983, the Henry House, nationally registered historic Victorian home, was born from one of Alabama's wealthiest families. After a top to bottom facelift by Little Pink Houses Construction, this is the go to luxury spot beside the city harbor on Lake Guntersville. Perfect for a staycation, weekend getaway, and a Mokes of North Alabama moke ride around beautiful Lake Guntersville. We offer whole property rental for weddings or your special events. We also rent our 5 beautiful in suites by the night individually for those romantic occasions. So make sure to check out the Henry House in Guntersville if you're looking to vacation. Look, myself, Bo, we talk about it each and every week, but I mean, Bo, we've actually been up there in Guntersville. We've been to the Henry House. We've taken one of those moke rides with Wes, and I'm telling you, it's a ton of fun. And so, if you're looking for a place to vacation, you don't have to go to the beach. It doesn't, Lake Guntersville is a perfect spot. And when me and you went up there about a year and a half ago, and I'd been to Guntersville, but not really been there as I've gotten older. And I was telling you, hey, this is a sleeping giant in this state for when it comes to vacationing.
well, it's waking up due
Yeah,
to people like Wes, and Ryan Morton and others. That place is becoming on the map. And those who do not know what a moke is, picture a James Bond car, compact car from
yeah,
the 1960s that's completely convertible. Goes about 35, 40 miles an hour, street legal, but you don't go faster than that around Lake Guntersville because you don't want to. That place is unbelievable. And you and I is about to be spending a lot of time up there with Jonathan Hyde at Supreme doing
yeah.
some work with him. So we're going to take full advantage of it. And anybody in Alabama, period, not even just North Alabama, needs to check that place out because it's finally becoming seen like it needs to be seen. And hopefully, people watching us will don't take our word for it. Just hop in the car. Okay, how it's 2-3 hours. It's worth the ride. I promise you.
Hey, and the weather's about to get perfect for one of those moke rides as
Oh
well,
my God.
running around
Dude,
Guntersville.
I'd love to be up there in the fall, be
Yeah.
out there near the water, ride one of those mokes and see those leaves changing here in about 2 weeks or so. Dude, it's going to be unbelievable.
We're going to get into our scores now from the weekend. We don't have the Thursday scores to be able to show on the screen, but, Bo, I did Ramsey and Winona Thursday night. That was a crazy game. Winona jumps up 7-0, and it looked like early. I was like, hey, Winona came to play, coming off a bye week, and, they knew how big that game was. And we were saying on the broadcast, hey, Ramsey better wake up a little bit. Well, Ramsey woke up a little bit. They outscored him 66-7 the rest of the game. And I'm telling you, they were impressive. Cameron Keenan at quarterback for Ramsey he's a problem. 6'4",
Yeah.
about 210 pounds. He's got great arm strength. He did have a couple turnovers in the ball game, but there's a reason that Ramsey's kind of been the favorite in 5A all year. I know Gulf Shores is the new #1 team, and I wish we had Corey on here to talk a little bit more about that Gulf Shores team this week. But as good as Gulf Shores is, they're undefeated right now. I don't know that I see a team in 5A that's on the level that Ramsey is.
They're good, man. They're real good. Well, the two losses to Auburn and Parker.
Yeah.
I was at the Parker game. Yeah,
I mean,
Parker's
20-17 to Parker and 13-7 to Auburn, who we'll talk about them here in a second. They had a huge win over Opelika last night, and that was a big win for Coach Etheridge and his group. So, looking at a couple of these scores to get things started, Andalusia just continues rolling 40-13 over Geneva. Big win for Athens. We talked about that game on Road to the Blue Map this week, Athens and Coleman, and a big win there for Athens up there around the Huntsville area. But we just mentioned it, Bo. Auburn 31, Opelika 30. Opelika was up 16-7 at halftime. They had a 13-point lead in the fourth quarter last night. Coach Etheridge has been without his starting quarterback since about midway through the Enterprise game, which was the second game of the season for them. Finding a way to score 31 points last night and get a huge rivalry win over Opelika. I mean, just talk a little bit about that game and how big that was for the Auburn Tigers last night.
You and I and Corey as well have been talking about Opelika as one of those teams that people keep sleeping on them. People keep sleeping on them, and things they just they'll find a way to maybe lose the game here or there. Well, we all thought last night was that night they took that step forward, and in a lot of people's eyes they did. Although they didn't win that game, I thought, man, this is perfect. This is prime for Opelika to win this game. The betting odds on the game was close, and then you're sitting here saying it's a rivalry game. This is the game that they're going to win, and the levee's going to break for Auburn because they've been scraping by, so to speak, the last few weeks. But one thing people don't factor in is coaching. You don't bet against Keith Etheridge. You don't bet against Mark Freeman. You don't bet against Terry Curtis. You don't bet against Paul Benefield in these big games. You just cannot do it because they find ways to win. They will duct tape something, put it out on the field to find a way to make it execute. I mean, huge win for Auburn. Huge win for Auburn.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was a big time win. It really kept them in position to still get a 2 seed in that region, and they're still in position to win the region. That's, Phoenix City's really good, and we'll talk about them later on when we see their score. And talk about their score, which is at the bottom of the screen down here. They dominated Dothan, but I mean, for Auburn, it's impressive to see what they've done. I mean, I do the show with Coach Etheridge every week. I talk to him about his team. He was he was worried, because he made a good point. Number one, they were expecting Davis Harsin, Coach Harson's son, to be the quarterback this year. Well, obviously he got fired. They move, so there's no Davis Harsin there. So now you have basically the guy that was going to be the backup is now your starter. Well, he gets hurt. And so they're basically down on their third, fourth-string quarterbacks now and still finding ways to win big-time 7A football games. So it's extremely impressive what Auburn has done so far, and they've put themselves in position, a big matchup with Phoenix City coming up here in a couple of weeks to pretty much determine who's going to win that region. And the last couple of years has determined who's gotten home field in that semifinal matchup between the two teams, which has been extremely important for both of them. But as we've talked about, there's maybe a team from the Mobile area that might be able to make some noise in 7A this year and break up that Auburn-Phoenix City semifinal matchup that we've had about the last 3-4 years. So big win for Auburn, though, last night. BB Comer over Isabella, 47-13. Some people thought that this might be a close game. You're fortunate you got to see BB Comer play. I've gotten to see him play this year. I didn't ever think this game would be very close. It's going to be very hard for many people in 2A. I think there's maybe only two teams, and they're up there around your area and are going to play here very soon they may be the only two teams that can play with BB Comer. And then we'll find out if Reeltown can maybe play with them later on as well.
Yeah, and those two teams you're mentioning is Fife and Pisgah. And I talked to Coach Fawcett. I actually was at his place yesterday. Misty and I drove down and delivered the football to Devin Harvey for the Player of the Week last week. And we talked about Isabel, and he said, they're definitely a formidable opponent. There's somebody we're going to have to execute to win. But you're right, and the Reeltown is the one that everybody is saying from the South, and it's kind of like in 6A football. Everybody's already deemed Clay Chalkville and Saraland. So it's one of those things where it just looks like that collision course is heading that way, and this one in the north is coming, and it's probably going to happen twice this year, counting the playoffs. So time will tell on both of those.
BC Rain beats Citronelle 47-14. We've been talking about Citronelle the last couple of weeks. They've had some big wins this season, but just wasn't able to get it done against BC Rain last night. And, that'd be a game that Corey could talk a little bit more about and talk a little bit more if he was on here with us and give us a little bit more information about BC Rain. I think BC Rain's got a good team, though, this year. And it showed last night with how they took care of a Citronelle team who's snuck up on some people and beaten some very good football teams so far this year. Baker takes care of business against Bart Sessions and Alma Bryant, 35-6 last night. Baker, they continue rolling outside of one slip up against Dothan. And it's setting up a huge game with Mary Montgomery here in a few weeks. They're down in Mobile. Should be a fun 7A game when those two meet. Beauregard 39, Sylacauga 38. Sylacauga had a 38-16 lead in the fourth quarter last night, and Beauregard finds a way to come back, score 23 points, and win the football game. What a comeback for Beauregard, and for Sylacauga now, 19-game losing streak at Sylacauga. And I don't understand how it's happened at Sylacauga, and I'm not trying to knock the community and all that, but there's no way that Sylacauga should ever be on a 19-game losing streak in football.
It's incredible. And unfortunately, maybe fortunately, a lot of staff members, coaching staff members from BB Comer, when the new coaching hire was made at Sylacauga, jumped ship and went to Sylacauga. Mm-hmm. And, they got their own reasons. I think they're probably regretting that now. BB Comer's staring down a blue map in the eyes, at least a shot at it, and they haven't won a football game yet. And very unfortunate for those guys. They're missing something special at Comer. I don't know the reason or whatever, but you're right. And you rewind the clock just a couple of years ago, and I remember Montgomery Jordan, Central Clay, Center Point, and Sylacauga was a fraction between all four of them.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable how good that they were then. And that we're not talking 5, 6 years ago. We're talking 3 years ago or so. It's incredible. I don't know. It's just really strange.
They were 7-2. Got beat by Benjamin Russell, lost their first round playoff game back in 2021, and have not won a game since then. 19 straight. Incredible. Yeah. It's shocking to see. I will say this, though, for Coach Chris Smelly and what he's done there, they've improved a lot. Last year, they were getting ran off the field. It was embarrassing last year for them. At least they've been in football games this year. And, we got to see them on the AHSAA TV game of the week. They actually played Elmore County decently that night. And you could see, hey, the improvements are there. They're getting better. They've just got to figure out how to close one out and win it now. And once you've lost this many, it kind of becomes a mental hurdle to get over. And so at some point, somebody's going to have to put their foot down and go, hey, guys, we're not losing. We are finding a way to win tonight. And when that happens, I think you'll see Sylacauga's program kind of get back going a little bit. Benjamin Russell took it to Chilton County last night. Benjamin Russell's, they've just been a weird team all year this year. They've been very up and down. They dominated Wetumpka to start the year that everybody thought was a really good win. And then they get dominated the next week by Danny Horn and Company. Then they go dominate Calera, and then they get dominated by Homewood, and then they dominate Smith Station and now dominate Chilton County. And so it's a weird group. And people are going to get to see them. They'll be the AHSAA TV game of the week Thursday night against Pelham this coming week. And so if you're sitting around Thursday, got nothing to do, find WOTM, My 68, any of those type of channels. And they'll be the statewide game of the week against Pelham. And you'll see if you watch the game, they've got athletes. They got Malcolm Simmons, who's committed to Auburn, playing wide receiver. They got Sadarian Morgan, who's probably going to be a top 10 player in the state. He's only a sophomore right now at wide receiver. And they got a quarterback in Gabe Benton who can distribute the football and spread it around, but it's just week to week. They haven't been very consistent, and they've got to find some of that consistency. It's going to be a big game for them coming up with Pelham, who got their first region win last night against Calera. And if Benjamin Russell can beat Pelham next week, it pretty much locks up the playoffs for them, and then they'll be playing Helena to win or lose the region later on. So
I think you need to go put in a complaint with the athletic director.
Yeah.
For those who don't know,
pick
I'll
it
let
up
you
a little
explain
bit.
that one. Yeah.
But yeah,
I'll
I mean,
let you
it's going to
explain
be
that one for
interesting.
those who don't know
It is a
who
good
the
win,
athletic
though.
director is.
Yeah.
Uh,
But good win for Benjamin Russell. I mean, anytime you go on the road, you win by 43 points. It's a good win. But they got to find some consistency within their team, and I think that they got humbled a little bit early in the season. They had a lot of people were talking high about them, and I think they've kind of come back down to earth, and maybe they're going to focus back up and start getting back to playing the style of football that a lot of people expected them to play coming into the year. Looking around at a couple other scores, hate it for Coach Ryan Locke and his group there at Hale County, Bibb County, coming off that loss to Andalusia last week. Maybe a little bit focused and a little bit ready to kind of go out there and go get after somebody, and they beat them 44-8. But you can tell with what Coach Locke's done there at Hale County, they've improved a ton over his 2 years, and you give him another 2 years, and I think he's going to have Hale County being able to compete with the teams like Bibb County, AHSAA, and some of those out of that region that they're in up there.
Yeah, I agree. He's doing a good job. And the one thing that I noticed when we were out there last year is he's already installed that family type atmosphere.
Yeah.
Where his wife's very involved. She's kind of like everyone's mother. He's very involved in the kids' lives off the field. They look to him as a role model. And anytime you can get that kind of foundation, guys will play their guts for you. And he's already got that. And to me, that's the biggest key of any program is getting the trust and having kids believe in what you're saying.
No doubt about it. Looking at some other scores, Bob Jones over Florence up there in 7A. Bob Jones, another team that's kind of been up and down at points this year. They've lost to some 6As, but they've beaten some 7As and can't really seem to find any consistency up there. Good win for Carver Montgomery over Cedar Grove, Georgia last night, 13-9. We talked about at the beginning of the year. Anytime we see somebody from the state of Alabama beating a team from another state, that's a big positive, and especially when it's a team from Georgia. Because people from Georgia love to try to tell you how much better their high school football is than Alabama high school football. So good win there for Carver Montgomery last night. Catholic Montgomery, can't say too much about that. It's 4 straight shutouts now, I believe, for the defense, 48-0. They ran away with the game against Montgomery Academy. That's a Montgomery Academy who competed for a state championship just 2 years ago. And they've fallen off big time since Coach Robert Johnson left down there, and Catholic able to take care of business. And, for them, Bo, they're just kind of trying to not get anybody hurt, keep making little improvements, and they know that they're looking ahead. They're looking ahead to the postseason. That's when their season, these 10 games, it's almost like a preseason for them. They're trying to get ready to make a 5-game run and try to go get back in the state championship.
First time in a long time. Nobody's talking about them.
Yeah.
What better scenario could you possibly have that nobody's talking about you? You got a quarterback that's accounted for over 10,000 yards in his career. You got a coach who's got probably one of the highest winning percentages over the last 3 years. Without question, he has one of the highest winning percentages in the entire state over the last 3 years, and nobody's mentioning them. And look, we're not going to talk about them much because that's what Juice wants. Don't look at us, guys. Go to the next one. We'll see y'all. We'll see you guys later on. Perfect scenario for them. Perfect. So I don't know who you're talking about, Caleb.
Center Point gets a win over Shades Valley, 26-20, and then they actually got 2 wins within about a 12-hour time period because they found out that their loss to Pell City will now count as a win. Pell City has to forfeit that game due to the same stuff that Coosa Christian was having to deal with, some stuff with the transfer rule, and them and Viger. Viger had to forfeit their win over UMS Wright as well, and so Viger moves from 5-0 to now 4-1 on the season as well. So Center Point, they basically got 2 wins within about a 12-hour time period, which was huge for them because it now puts them right back in position to possibly get a 2 seed there in that region and be hosting a playoff game in a few weeks.
And just like last year, they're not supposed to win any games. They move up from 5A, and George Bates, we went out and talked to him. He's like, he didn't complain. He didn't jump ship and leave because they was moving up. He stayed the course. And lo and behold, they go and beat Pinson Valley, perennial blue blood, and they finished second in that region last year. Guess what? You just said it. I don't have to say it. They're in position again. I don't know if anybody in the North can beat Clay in a 10-game scenario, playoff, region scenario, but hosting a playoff game, nothing wrong with that. And it looks like George Bates is right on pace to do that again. So kudos to him.
Yeah, he's doing a really good job up there. A place like you just mentioned, they fluctuate. When you're fluctuating, it's not easy to do because you're one of the lowest 6As. When you're one of the higher 5As, it's nice, but you're one of the lower 6As right now and still finding ways to win games. It's impressive what they've done up there. Talking about another program that doesn't get talked about a whole lot, and they don't mind it at all, Bo. Central Clay, 47-0 over Valley. And it is weird. I mean, they're the number 3 team in 5A, but just nobody talks about them. Nobody says, hey, Central Clay could win 5A. It's about Ramsey and Pleasant Grove and, all the, some of the Mobile area teams. And nobody ever mentions those guys over on the east side of the state, but they just keep rolling. And that's a really good Valley team. So Valley team has lost 1 game this year. Their only loss has been to Handley. And they go and beat them 47-0 last night. I mean, they've dominated all season. They beat a 6A in Benjamin Russell. They dominated a Handley team who we think can compete for the 4A state championship. And they seem to be the real deal. The one thing I'll say is, after seeing Ramsey in person the other night, Ramsey could give them some problems if they were to end up meeting in the state championship. The athleticism from Ramsey, the speed from Ramsey would be tough for Central Clay to kind of keep up with defensively. But then on the flip side, I don't know how Ramsey would be able to hold up to the run game of Central Clay in the way that they would try to pound them all night. I mean, it would take QB Reese having about 35 tackles for Ramsey to be able to hold up to Central Clay. And so Central Clay's still got to get through some really tough teams in the playoffs. They'll have to, probably go down to Mobile at some point during there, which is always a tough trip. But I think Coach Horn just loves it the way it's set up. Nobody ever talks about them, and yet they just sit there and do what they do week in, week out.
Dude, 47-0 over a really good Valley team.
Yeah.
If you didn't at least perk your head up and your eyes didn't get open over that Handley score, then you don't know anything about high school football. That's when I said, okay, they went from a good team to a contender. And I got to talk to Coach Horn last week at Alexandria briefly, in the pregame warm-ups. And his typical Coach Horn, if you listen to him, they're 0-5. He was like, I got to stay after this bunch, Bo. They just, you can't give them an inch. They lose focus. I got to stay on their tails, and I'm thinking, buddy, something's working. And, not putting the cart ahead of the horse, but Ramsey better be stout up front because if they're not, their offense is going to be sitting on the sidelines over there watching Central Clay play.
And he will line up in the bone and go 9 minutes, 80 yards. I mean, he's willing to do that.
That's actually that's probably his dream drive.
Yeah.
And he'd love that. That'd be, that'd make his day right there. Yeah, you better get ready to get in the phone booth. You may beat them, but you're going to do it in the phone booth.
Yeah, and what's scary about them is people from there would tell you going into the year, we think we're going to be good this year, but it's next year and the year after that we really think. So they're already ahead of schedule, and so they're about to be right back competing. We saw them play for back-to-back when Coach Horn got over there. They're right back to having a chance to be there pretty consistently over the next few years. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but Central Phoenix City 48, Dothan 14 last night. We actually thought this would be a close football game and one that Dothan could maybe upset Phoenix City. Phoenix City's left no doubt. And, we talked about that matchup with Auburn and Phoenix City and how big it's going to be, but Auburn's really going to have their work cut out trying to stop this Phoenix City offense and score on this Phoenix City defense. I mean, that's been the thing. In the past, Phoenix City scored a lot of points, but they maybe would give up some defensively. Right now, I think you could make an argument, even with Thompson beating Hewitt last night, Phoenix City may be the most complete team in 7A this season.
I don't think there's any question. And, there's one key piece of that puzzle, and he grew up here in Rainbow City, Alabama, where I'm sitting right now, and it's Patrick Nix, wherever he's went. Whether one of his sons is quarterback or not, he's been successful. He's had the luxury of coaching both his sons there at quarterback. but it doesn't matter. He, and look, it's one of those scenarios when you got it rolling like he does, kids want to come be a part of that, you know.
Yeah.
And you see what happened in Pell City and the Coos, and people go, oh, I don't understand. Well, what happens is tons of kids want to come be a part of this. Who wouldn't want to be a part of? They're becoming one of these national names at this
Yeah.
point. I mean, they're winning so much football. Now they do got to get down there and capture that blue map before that recognition really comes through. But man, you're right. In 7A, they look like a juggernaut, brother.
No doubt about it. And one of his sons right now is plus 1,000 in the Heisman. So just throwing that one out
Yeah,
there. Plus 1,000.
yeah.
That's pretty good value there, in my opinion, for what he's been doing this year. And next week's going to tell a lot for Bo Nix. They take on Washington. It's going to be game day next week, and we'll find out a lot about Oregon and Bo Nix. If they go take care of business against Washington, watch out. He may be holding up a Heisman Trophy at the end of the
Yeah,
season.
I agree.
So,
He's playing phenomenal football.
looking at some other scores, Chambers ends up beating Abbeville last night. You got Clements over Marion County. Dadeville over Beulah. I did that game. It was kind of a sloppy game for Dadeville, but yet they still find a way to win by 31. I mean, they just line up in the eye. They've got two running backs that are phenomenal, and they carried them last night in that 41-10 win there over Beulah. Demopolis with a 21-0 win over Shelby County, a good win for them. You got Dora beat Cordova 40-7. We're going to have Dora against Oak Grove on the AHSAA TV Game of the Week here in a few weeks, and that should be a really fun matchup. Shavis Williams has done a great job since taking over there at Dora. They beat Aniana earlier in the season, and that kind of surprised a lot of people. And so he's got it going on, and good win there for Dora last night. Elmore County over Tallahassee. Kyle Caldwell and his group get a big win and continue kind of rolling there. Their only slip up so far has been the Danny Horn and Central Clay, but everybody in that region, it looks like, is going to end up losing to them. And they've gotten past the two best teams in Valley and Elmore County now, so they're going to kind of run away with that region there. Enterprise 49-17 over Prattville. It's been a really rough year for Prattville. I'm not really sure what has caused that program to fall the way that it has, but it is a far, far cry from what it was, back in the mid between 2000 2010. They were what Thompson is right now. That's what Prattville was in 6A, at the time, which would be 7A now. They've really fallen off big time, and
Got a theory on that, Caleb.
What?
The rise of the private schools there.
Yeah,
St. James,
Prattville Christian, Marbury's got a lot better too.
and then you had Montgomery Academy in a state championship game recently.
Yeah.
Montgomery Catholic has been there. It's like even with what used to be Robert E. Lee, all those teams have kind of just you've seen that come into that area of those Catholic schools, but those private schools there is the ones right has rose to the top recently, and I think that has something to do with it.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see that. I think it's a good point there. I think people were leaving Montgomery and moving to Prattville for their kids to play sports there and do that. Now they don't have to. They can just go enroll them in private school over there and possibly get a scholarship, something like that, from one of those places. And so I think that's made a big difference. But hate to see it for Prattville. My buddy Stacey Niels, who watches us, pretty consistently on here, and I hope he's not tuning in right now having to listen to us talk about them. But he knows they're in a rough spot, and hopefully they're going to kind of bounce back and start figuring some things out there, because it's still a sleeping giant, in my opinion. They got facilities, they got players, and if they can get things figured back out, you'll see Prattville start winning some football games again. A good win for Eufaula last night over Carroll Ozark. Carroll beat Charles Henderson earlier this season, and they had to battle it out 38-37 last night. They scored very late in the game to get that win. Fairfield and Carver Birmingham, I'm not sure if they just went and rolled the basketballs out and started playing basketball, but 70-52 was the final of that game last night. And their basketball score may not even be that high when they play each other here later on this year. Hey, look, good for Fairfield, though. I saw them play Jasper on the TV Game of the Week earlier this year, and they're a young team. They got a really good running back. They got a quarterback who can distribute the football. They got about 3 really good wide receivers, and they can give their quarterback time up front and they can block for the run game. They're a dangerous group, and they played Ramsey as close as anybody has in that region. Only 28-15 is what Ramsey beat them. I think they're starting to really, really improve and get a lot better. And that's a region next year. It's got a chance to be maybe the tightest region in 5A. next season. If all that stays together right there, if Jasper doesn't move up, if that region were to stay together, it really would have a chance to be the tightest and toughest region in 5A next year with Pleasant Grove, Ramsey, John Carroll, and how much they've improved, Fairfield, Jasper, Carver, Birmingham. There's some really good football teams that are all in that region right there. Faith Academy down in Mobile, a big win over Viger last night, 21-13. Corey had talked about that game and how big that matchup was there in 5A, and Faith gets a win. And so we talked about Centerpoint getting 2 wins in about 12 hours, where Viger got 2 losses right here in about 12 hours because they got the loss last night and then found out they have to forfeit their win over UMS Wright. And so all of a sudden, a team that was undefeated going into yesterday has 2 losses on the season very, very quickly. But I think Viger still got a good shot of hosting a playoff game and being right there with a chance to do some special stuff here towards the end of the season. Tough night for Collinsville last night, Bo. They've now had 2 really big games this year in Pisgah and Fife, and both of them have just kind of let Collinsville know, hey, y'all are good, but you're just not on this level right now.
Yeah, what's happened in those games, anytime you're starting majority underclassmen and you see a certain helmet or someone shows up and gets off that bus, one of 2 things is going to happen. Either those guys are going to rise up and they're going to play their guts out to try to prove that they're there, or they're going to be like, okay, so-and-so's here, this is the ones my dad told me about. This is, and it's kind of like that's happened in those 2 games, because both of those games, it's been 30-something to single scores at halftime, and it's pretty much over at that point. But I want to tell you this, Caleb, after the Geraldine loss, everybody wrote Fife off. They was like, they're finished. They just don't have it this year. Since that time, up coming into last week, that outscored their opponents 170-0. Yeah. Then you had a was it 53-6 on top of that. So now we're at
23-6 or 223-6. Yeah.
Next week they have Sandrock, and then the big one with Pisgah. Yeah. And here's the scary part, buddy. This is what I was getting to. Logan Anderson looks like the Logan Anderson of old. Now against Geraldine, he did not. He looked like he's 60%, maybe 65. He looks like he's about 85 to 90% now. And last week he had 245 yards and 5 touchdowns. And last night I think he had 4 touchdowns and almost 200 yards again. That's the scary part. He's the X factor in any of these games, because when he goes off like he can and usually does, that other offense tends to sit over there and watch Fife play football until he scores, and then it's a few minutes later, and then you go press to try to get those points back. That's what happens when you play them. So his merger, the offensive line starting to gel somewhat. He's had to move some guys around, and Blake Dobbins is starting to get really steady at quarterback, comfortable. So we'll know here in 2 weeks who's going to be the front runner for 2A North.
Well, Gadsden City is the front runner in their region right now, and they showed it last night, 69-0. And from what I was kind of told by a few people, they kind of made it look like Hazel Green just didn't even belong on the field with them last night.
Yeah, I had a punt return call back. It would have been 70, up in the 70s. But the thing about it is they needed a win like that after a bad loss last week to Hillcrest, and then they had a gut-wrenching loss to
Hartselle.
2 weeks ago. Hartselle, yeah. So they needed a win like that, and I think that region's finished now. Fort Payne lost last night to Lee Huntsville. I think they're going to coast to that 1 seed and host, that's all you want to do. They between now and then they can have some tune-ups, and they got to get ready for that, because I think all eyeballs is on the playoffs for Ollie Smith this year. He's been there long enough. This is all his guys, and I know he can get it done, and the city knows he can get it done up here. He's going to plug and play and get guys in the right position. But, yeah, all eyes are going to be on the playoffs for Gadsden City.
Geraldine 55, Ohatchee 6. Not the result, I guess, that surprises me. It's the 49-point difference that really surprises me in this one.
I don't know what to say, man. I don't know if Ohatchee's gotten injuries or something's happened. 'Cause they started out shocking the world, beating people
Yeah.
they were not supposed to beat on paper and winning close games and then blowing others out. And now these last 2 weeks, they've been outscored 100. I don't know. I don't have it in front of me, but maybe 110-12 or something
Yeah.
like that.
Not been good.
It's Jacksonville beat them 50 something to 6, and then Geraldine beats them 50 something to 6. And Carlos Mann last night had 175 yards and 3 touchdowns, and then he had another one receiving. Just another workman effort for him and Coach Michael Davis, and they seem to bounce back really well after that loss to Sylvania earlier this year. So they look like a tough team heading into this stretch run.
Looking at some more scores from around the state. Gulf Shores, your new #1 team in 5A. They dominate Williamson 45-13. But this one right here shocked me, and it shocked me because of how well they played defensively, Bo. Guntersville 20, Scottsboro 6. I saw 6-0 at halftime last night. I was shocked by it. Credit to Coach Reese and his group because they're kind of similar to Scottsboro in the sense that a lot of people look at them and go, hey, well, Guntersville can score, but can they stop anybody? Well, they stopped one of the best offenses in the state last night, held them to 6, and that was a huge win there for the Guntersville Wildcats.
Yeah, and Scottsboro's parking lot at night with no lights on is pretty good too. I'm gonna throw that out there. Got to see it last night. Uh, I'm just joking. Yeah, no, I had Justin Thrasher and Heath Loki and Sugar Shane on last night, the play-by-play guys for Scottsboro, and they were just shocked as you and I are shocked. Not that they lost, the fashion that they lost, that they only put
Yeah.
up 6.
We would have thought it would have been
And
like
one thing
41-40 or something like that,
I did too. And one thing they said that kind of threw the wrench in the spokes all night, he said they were running like a 5-2 look. And without hesitation, every other play, they had a big, strong nose that was shooting. It was low center of gravity. He was shooting straight across. So he was holding the point of attack. Those two backers was blitzing the gaps straight up. The A and the B gap right there. So that fullback dive, which makes that triple option go, never got started last night. Their fullbacks, whether it be Keelan Alvarez or the other gym, I can't remember his name right now, they've been averaging 150, 200 yards a game. And when your fullback is going straight at you and getting 150, 200 yards a game, you don't stop that first, you're not stopping the triple option at all because they're going to stay in front of the chains. They're going to get first downs, but they couldn't get that going last night. So they had to go to the secondary stuff where they start going a little wider. Well, when you do that versus a team like Guntersville, that's when their speed kicks in. So if you can hold that point of attack and not get destroyed by that fullback, well, then they got to pull it and go do something outside. Well, here comes Guntersville speed. Kudos to Guntersville for not getting fancy offensively, but gearing down their offense enough to slow the game down a little bit. Because last thing you want to do after you get a stop like that is go 3 and out with 3 pass plays and then put them back out there. So huge win for Coach Reese. And there is scenarios where they could get in a 3-way tie, and the X factors is going to be Sardis, who has 1 loss by 3 points to Arab in the region. Scottsboro goes to Sardis next week, so that'll handle that. One of those two is going to emerge, and then Arab only has the 1 loss in region. So there's a chance where Arab and or Sardis and or Scottsboro could be, and Guntersville could have a 3-way tie with 1 loss is there, or a 4-way tie with 1 loss. Well, no, you can't have a 4-way tie because Scottsboro's playing that Sardis.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a chance for the 3-way tie. So it'll be interesting. But Guntersville did put themselves, I think, in the driver's seat at least.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Another team that's been in the driver's seat for a while now, Handley over Anniston, 39-6 last night. Anniston's been very up and down, and they were scoring some points earlier in the year, and all of a sudden now, Piedmont held them to 14 last week, and they kind of hurt themselves a bunch in that game, and then only 6 against Handley last night. And I know it's year 1 for Coach Jackson. They lost a ton. That's what people don't consider. They lost a ton off that team last season.
Yeah.
And now you have a new coach that's coming in. He's trying to establish the way he wants stuff done and all that. I think he's done a good job there, but I don't think it's his fault as a coach. I think it's more of the team. You got to show up in big games, and they just really hadn't shown up in any big games this year. Andalusia beat them handily. Jacksonville beat them pretty handily. They were there for about a half against Jacksonville, but you got to play all 48 minutes. And then last night didn't really show up against Handley. And I think that would be the biggest knock on them so far is in the big games this year, they hadn't performed very well.
Yeah, and I hate that for Coach Jackson.
Yeah.
And they graduated a lot, and then they had, I think, 4 to 5 transfers out. And I'm not just talking about average football players. We're talking about the nation's top Russian and Grayshawn. And then we had Big Miami moved out, who's been a 2 to 3 year starter there at offensive line as a 300-pounder, and a couple of 2 or 3 others. But, yeah, I don't know. You're right, Caleb. The big games they've struggled in as of late, and that could be part of getting into his system. But one thing you want to see is it kind of diminish as the season goes on, and now, credit to them, they have lost to some really, really good teams. But the games like, last week against Piedmont, I thought they put up a little bit more points. I know points are hard to come by versus Handley, obviously. But, yeah, to get back to where Anniston, quote unquote, was last year, to where they're up on Andalusia 21-0. That's what you're looking for, and then close those games out. So, yeah, I've got some work to do there. Be interested to talk to him Tuesday on his coaching show.
Even though it's a new coaching staff, new, all that stuff, do you feel like that blowing that 21-0 lead was kind of the turning point right now for Anniston? I mean, seems like they've kind of been going this way since that point where they kind of blew that lead and then now haven't had the type of year they were maybe expecting to have so far this season.
Yeah, it gutted the community, Caleb, because they hadn't been in a situation like that. Even though, granted, what was it, 2018, they went to the semis and lost to Ron Wiggins, who eventually went and played UMass in state. But it wasn't the same scenario. That was a back and forth game. This game, they were booking hotels at halftime.
Yeah.
Rick Boyd called me and said, "I'm leaving. This game's over. It's 21-0." And I said, "We'll just hang out and see how they do." Yeah, I mean, it's total domination.
Yeah.
And then, it gutted the community up here, and it's sad because their players still talk about it. Well, then I thought, whether win or lose, they'd get it out of their system when they played Andalusia. Whether we win it or we lose it, let's get past that one. But it seems like that loss has cost more than just that game. I can tell you that. Because honestly, man, them in Cherokee County's really good, and they could beat Anniston, but you'd have to think Anniston would have been a favorite last year over Cherokee County, and there was no fear factor there because they had played them recently. So they'd have probably been the favorite in that game. So they'd have probably had a really good shot at a blew them out. And that's no disrespect to Cherokee County, but man, it went from that to what we're seeing now. It's kind of bad. Like I said, I like to talk to Coach Jackson. He's a real honest guy. I love him to death. He's a really good guy. He's actually helped me in my life a little bit with some health tips and stuff. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to talk to him Tuesday.
Helena gets a big win over Briarwood. Briarwood's done nothing but improve as this season has gone on. They had 2 tough losses to start the year. I mean, they played 2 pretty good teams now too, but they were dominated by Clay Chalkville and lost that game, and then lost again the next week. And since then, they've gotten going, and they're playing really well. They were up on Helena at halftime last night. Helena comes back. They end up getting a win. Briarwood was this close to catching they ran a halfback pass in the end zone. I saw a video on X or Twitter, whatever we want to call it now. And they were this close to catching a halfback pass for a touchdown that would have given them the lead, and they probably ended up winning that football game. So Helena's in firm control there in that region. We talked about Benjamin Russell earlier. If they can get a win over Pelham this next week, it's going to pretty much set it up for Benjamin Russell and Helena to be playing each other down in Benjamin Russell for the region championship here in a couple of weeks. And so that should be a really fun matchup. And, we've talked about it all year. Helena's a team that they seem to be a team that's out on a mission this year. Didn't have the year they wanted last season, didn't finish the way they wanted to. They've played extremely well so far this year.
You think what do you think the over and under was that Richie Busby went to Goodfellas after the win last night?
I'm gonna say it was a good chance last night. He deserved it too. After that,
what was his buddy, the golfer? His buddy,
I can't remember his name.
Yeah. I bet you they went and hung out and enjoyed the victory. We'll say that. Yeah.
Hillcrest Tuscaloosa gave up double digits last night for the first time all season. They still win 49-14, but they're a dominant defense, and they're a team that we talked about people that nobody's talking about. Well, Hillcrest is one of those teams nobody's talking about. They're 7-0. They're playing great defense. They're giving up right at 7 points a game this year. They've been winning with their backup quarterback. They're waiting on their stud starter to get back here right before the postseason. And they're a team that everybody's kind of sleeping on, but I'd love to see that matchup with them and Saraland later on this season and just see how they can hold up to that offense of Saraland, who KJ Lacey had a pretty good night for them last night.
Yeah, Hillcrest, man, they made me a believer when they did what they did to Gadsden City.
Yeah.
Gadsden City
They
moved the ball.
scored 69 last night, and they held them to 3.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
and Gadsden City moved the ball on them some, but don't matter. You can go 20-20 all you want, unless you're getting it in, it don't matter. And I do believe that quarterback got hurt in that Gadsden City game. I'm almost positive he did, or is what Xavier told me. He's my play-by-play guy. Texted me during the Gadsden City game, so that made me a believer when they did that. I was like, man, these cats are for real.
Big win for Oaks Bluff last night. They've had a really good season so far, 28-14 over Plainview. But talk a little bit about them and the type of year that they've kind of had right now.
It's kind of strange because, coming into the year, they were a little down last year, and then there was no talk about them this year.
Mm-hmm.
But when you go watch them play, they're just big and physical up front. They got a couple of kids that can tote the mail and are decisively fast kids. They got game speed. Like when you put them on the field and you watch them during a game, the guys can move. And Coach Rob, one thing he does good is stay in front of the chains. He don't do a lot of. He's not going to line up in 5 wides and all that. He's going to line up in the I formation, Caleb. I don't have to tell you. You watch Dave will play, and they're going to stay in front of the chains, and they're going to make you beat them. And they do that really well. And last night was a testament of that. I'm watching a national championship coach, multi-time national championship defensive coordinator call against them. Well, here's the deal. Jeremy Pruitt had guys in place to make plays last night. But if your Joe is better than their Jimmy and you can't get the guy on the ground, it does not matter.
Yeah.
And I seen a lot of that because they're big and strong, was just leaning on Plainview last night. And stayed in front of them, ran the clock, took the crowd out of the game, and methodically went down the field in that I formation and scored. And played good, good sound, make them snap it one more time defense against Plainview, and ultimately got that win. Yeah, they're setting themselves up to host a playoff game.
No, yeah, they are. I mean, you make a good point too, though, right there. Everybody loves to point to the coaches and coach this, coach that, all that. They've got a national championship winning defensive coordinator that they couldn't get a stop because the players weren't executing. Sometimes it's up to little Jimmy to go out there and go make a play. Sometimes little Jimmy has to go out there and go make the tackle. And sometimes little Jimmy needs to keep his outside shoulder free and force the runner back inside. And if he doesn't, they get to the outside and all of a sudden bust a run. Sometimes it isn't the coaching. And people need to understand, everybody loves to sit up in the stands and talk about run the ball, throw the ball. But sometimes it's up to little Jimmy to just execute the play that was called and do it the right way that they've practiced all week. And if it doesn't get done, it don't matter if Nick Saban's over there calling the defense for Plainview last night. Oaks Bluff would have continued scoring if they don't make tackles and they don't, play the way that you're supposed to play, especially against that type of offense. That's the key against, when you're playing the double wing, I, and all these type of formations, you can't get out of your lane. You've got to do your job, stay in your lane, and do what you're supposed to do. Otherwise, that's what they're trying to take advantage of, you over pursuing or doing something that you're not supposed to do, trying to go make a play instead of just doing your job defensively. And it's good to see Oaks Bluff getting back to winning some games. And speaking of a team that got back to winning some games last night, I think Oak Mountain just kind of got the rough part of, hey, we're getting a Hoover team who struggled so far this year. They know that they still have their playoff chances right there in front of them. And Hoover kind of went out and said, hey, we're done playing Thompson and Hewitt and Mountain Brook and Vestavia and all these teams. And we're happy to go see somebody that we can maybe beat up on a little bit. And they did just that last night, 62-14. That looks like Hoover football right there.
Yeah. How do you think Wade felt after that game?
Ooh, he had to feel like a weight was lifted off his shoulder.
Yeah, had to be. And I hate that for those kids at Oak Mountain. You and I got to know a lot of them doing their coaches show last year. It was a statement win for Hoover because it's like, finally we can breathe and let's get against an opponent that we can breathe a little, because this has been a gauntlet that they ran through, and that's no disrespect to Oak Mountain. I mean, just look at the trend of the two programs the last few
Yeah.
years. I'm not taking a shot at Oak Mountain. We live in a society where everybody thinks you're taking a shot. No, just look at the numbers. And
Yeah.
to get that win for the Hoover kids had to be huge, and do it where some other younger Hoover kids can get some meaningful snaps. And that's always good for your program. Those are immeasurable to programs, to have young kids, JV kids in there getting varsity snaps in a meaningful game. So that alone was huge for Hoover.
We hadn't talked about this team a ton in 4A when we talk about teams that can make some noise, but Reggie brought them up as one of the game of the weeks this past week. Jackson 50, Escambia County 7 last night. They ended up getting some points late, but it's a dominant win there for Jackson in a game that some people thought could be kind of close. And man, I'm telling you, 4A in the South is just, it's loaded. I mean, whoever comes out of the South, I mean, I think Cherokee County is going to run away with the North unless just something crazy happens, but they're kind of in a tough spot because whoever comes out of the South is going to be extremely tested walking into, Bryant-Denny to play for the state championship this next year.
If you're Coach Kelly at Cherokee County, and we're not saying this is happening. We're just don't put the cart ahead of the horse. But you get into a one-game playoff, you take your chances. It don't matter who. Let the chips fall. Somebody gets injured, blah blah blah. But in the South, this is the year, and I talked about this on the final drive. Normally Jacksonville's in the North. Normally Anniston's in the North. Well, they're in the South as well. So you're sitting here and you're like, how many more teams can the South 4A take?
Yeah, you're looking at Bibb County, Andalusia, Jackson, Handley, Jacksonville, Catholic. That's 6 teams that literally we could all
if
see
any
them playing
6
for a
of them
state
won
championship.
it, I wouldn't be shocked. If any 6 of them won it, I wouldn't be shocked.
And they're all in the South and going to have to run through each other to go play for a state championship. I mean, it's
unbelievable.
4A South may be the most loaded division in the classifications of any classification this season. I mean,
it may be like Fife was. It may be like Fife was in 20. If you remember that, check this out. So they move up from 2A. So already you're at a disadvantage. You would think numbers wise, and they were. I mean, I believe Piedmont had 86 kids that year on their roster. Fife had 40s, maybe mid 40s. Fife had, I believe, out of their 11 starters, 9 were 2A guys. Piedmont had 0. All right, so that's just that game. All right, check this out. They play Oakman when Antoine Odom's son comes back at quarterback in round 1. They score 70 on them and they beat them, but they lose Malachi Mize, who tears his labrum. All right, then Caleb Lyles got injured. All right, then they go on the road. No, they have Welborn come in, who was ranked 3rd in the state. The only loss was to Piedmont in the last second. They beat them handily. They lose. Caleb Lyles gets injured. They have 2 more injuries in that game. I can't remember.
I think Benfield got hurt in that game.
And it was Ohatchee the next week when Eli he had a torn ACL and was playing on it. Well, he just blew it completely out in the Ohatchee game. So then he's out. All right. So then Chase. Then they play Piedmont. So Welborn was 3, Ohatchee was 4 or 5, and their only loss was to Welborn. And then Piedmont's only loss was to Ohatchee. So they play 3 top 5 teams in a row. And when they get done with that and that Oakman game, they had about 8 guys that normally would not even dress that were having to play not only offense, but both ways.
Yeah.
So then when they limped into the state championship game, they look across and here's Catholic.
And they got down 16-0.
Bro, it was down 16-0, and I'm talking about a loaded Catholic.
Yeah.
So that's the scenario. That's the scenario you may see with 4A South, though.
Yeah.
Whoever comes out of all of that is probably going to be beat up pretty good. And that's why I said Cherokee County, just right the ship, get into a one-game playoff, hopefully with everybody healthy, turn Cornejo loose, stay in front of the chain. We're just saying if that happens. Coach Kelly's got to kind of like that.
Yeah, the biggest thing for Cherokee County is you can't get caught the way Clay Chalkville was last year. Everybody had already kind
Yep.
of penciled in Clay Chalkville. Hey, they're going to play for the
Yep.
state championship again. You go get beat in the first round by Parker.
Yep.
So that's going to be their biggest enemy is going to kind of be themselves. You can't get caught looking ahead, but I don't think there's any doubt that Cherokee County is the favorite in the north, and they've got a lot easier path. It's not. I'm not trying to say that as don't. If you're a Cherokee County fan, don't get upset with all that. You've got an easier path than a lot of those teams in the South because we
Yep.
just talked about there's 6 teams in the South who, if they are all play, if any of them are playing for a state championship, we're not surprised by it
Wouldn't
at
be
all. And then you
shocked.
have Anniston sitting there who, if they could just figure it out and get hot,
Yeah.
they're athletic
Dark
enough and good
horse.
enough to go make some noise as well. So, the South
Dark
is
horse.
absolutely loaded, and it's going to be a lot of fun to keep up with that as we go on. Speaking of one of those teams from the South, Jacksonville, we won't have to talk too much about them. 63-14 over Cleveland County. They just continue scoring points and finding ways to win games. But speaking of teams that can score points, Fort Payne can score some points, but they also give up a lot of points, and that really finally caught up with them last night as they lose 49-42. I mean, you look at a couple of their losses this year, and they scored 41 against Gadsden City and got beat. 42 against Lee of Huntsville now and got beat, and 51 against Scottsboro and got beat. You got to be able to stop people, and Fort Payne just haven't been able to do that, and that's really kind of been the biggest fall for them this year. They're good enough offensively to beat people, but they just can't stop anybody.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because Coach Elmore and them, had high expectations coming into this year, and I hate to say this, but I hope that Gadsden City loss didn't deflate them. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And because you lose games like that have been circled all year, and this is for the region championship. Sometimes when you lose a game like that, it can deflate the rest of your season.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that's not the case. They're still a dangerous team. Any team that can score 40 at just by getting off the bus is a dangerous team. If they can get 2 or 3 stops here or there, and you're right. I was shocked last night. They were down
Yeah.
big in that game and come screaming back to make it actually took the lead.
Yeah.
They were up 42-41 or something like that at one point, and then they ended up ultimately losing. They probably ran out of gas. I mean, it takes a lot of energy to come back on teams. So. But I hate that for them. But that's you're right, Caleb. They're still kind of a mystery, dark horse. Hey, they may not be. They may have to travel first round now.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then good
There's a
win
very
last
good
night.
chance. Yeah, there's a very good chance they may have to travel now.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, that was a tough loss last night. They really couldn't afford that one, especially after
That's
losing to
right.
Gadsden City. Lexington, they continue playing well. Big win for them, 31-12 last night over Falkville. They've had a really good season so far this year. Looking at some other ones, good win for Lincoln last night, 29-17. And Bo, I'll tell you another team that's not getting talked about enough, Locust Fork,
Jeez.
61-6 over Pleasant Valley last night. And we talk about teams that can score. They can score and they get stops on defense as
Yeah,
well. They kind of really seem to be a complete team that nobody's considering, nobody's talking about, that really could sneak up there and really make some noise in the postseason this year.
dude. I don't know what else they got to do. I mean, it's not like this is some trash Pleasant Valley team. They had a tough loss last week, but other than that, they'd beat everybody on their schedule pretty
Yeah.
handily. And then last week, I don't know what happened in that Raglan game, but dude, Locust Fort, like you said, the scary part about those guys is, like we just mentioned, Fort Payne. They're like, man, they're killing it offensively. Well, Locust Fort's killing it offensively, and they're killing it defensively. So they look like a complete team. I haven't dug into their schedule real deep, but every week it looks like 40 something to 10 or 7 or 40 something to 3 or 60 something to whatever. I mean, again, quietly doing it. Love it. That's what you want as a head coach.
We've mentioned this team a couple times, and we'll just keep saying it every week. Watch out for Mary Montgomery. 48-13 over Davidson last night. They're sitting there at number 4 in 7A. They're one of those. It's one of those situations until they do it, until they beat Auburn, until they beat Phoenix City. Nobody's really going to believe in them. I'm not going to believe in them. I mean, just being honest, but they're a dangerous team that does have the capability of upsetting one of those two teams and maybe getting some new blood in the South there to play for a 7A state championship. So a good win for them last night. And we'll start kind of quickly getting through some of these other games. Moody, a good win over Springville last night, 28-17. Muscle Shoals, a huge win for them over Hartselle in double overtime, 55-49. That puts them in firm control of that region up there because when you beat someone who also is right there at the top with you, you don't just gain a game, you gain 2 games because they now have to win. You would have to lose twice in order to lose the tiebreaker against them. So a huge win there for Muscle Shoals last night over them. North Jackson able to get a win over New Hope. Good for them. North Jackson's gotten better as this season's gone on. You can kind of tell they've improved and gotten better as the year gone on. North Sand Mountain, a good win over Sandrock, 47-28. Hey, for Sandrock, though, scoring 28 points, that's a positive for them and got some offense going. You're going to need it walking in the next week when they take on Fife. It's going to be a little bit tougher next week when they play against them. But good win for Notasulga over Verbena last night, 50-14. Oakman over Fayette County. And then I saw that he was in here a little bit earlier. I don't think he's still in here with us, but if he comes back and watches this one, Fluff Bothwell last night, 62-38 or 36
Did you
over
see his stat
Etowah with
line?
the win. Yeah, I mean, but that's what I was going to bring up. His stat line is just unbelievable. And
I don't want to try to butcher it, but was it 255 yards rushing, 5 touchdowns? 255 yards and 5 touchdowns rushing. Then it was
22, I
122
think, receiving.
yards
Yeah.
and 2 touchdowns receiving, and then 1-for-1 passing for 40 yards and a touchdown, and then 17 tackles, 3 tackles for loss.
He single-handedly won the game. I mean, he single-handedly won the game for him last night.
Yeah. Yeah, that guy's I mean, he's 4A back of the year last year for a reason in a loaded year in 4A.
He's going to South Alabama, right?
Yeah, he's a commit South Alabama. What does the guy got to do to go? And no shot at South Alabama, but my goodness.
Yeah, you may see some better offers start coming his way here soon.
It looks like Herschel Walker with his shirt off, man. If you ever looked at his Instagram, dude's put together like a tank. I don't know what else a man's got to do. I mean, the dude's an unbelievable good kid too. I talk to him, I chat sometimes. A good kid, man. What else does a man got to do?
Oxford 28, Pell City 25. Did Sam Adams and company kind of get caught maybe overlooking Pell City a little bit last night, or has Rush Probst just done that good of a job at Pell City to be right there competing with them?
Well, I think it's a combination of 2 things. Pell City has steadily gotten better. I went out to their practice last week and talked with Coach for a little bit. And then I talked to Sam Adams this week. And it's funny how if you go to Average Joe's page, you'll see a picture of Sam Adams and Rush Probst talking to each other there at midfield. We had Noah out there shooting that game last night. And, certain news outlets said, these 2 hate each other. And they, all that crap. And all that's not true, obviously. But, man, they were losing the entire game, Caleb, till right there late. And then come back and win. I can tell you one distraction. I can guarantee you I know what one of the distractions is. Take a guess. It was homecoming week at Oxford. I can promise you that was one of the distractions.
Yeah, no, that's never a good thing.
Yeah, that's one of the distractions right there. I can assure you.
If there's one week that coaches hate in the football season, it's homecoming week. I mean,
they concentrate on everything but football.
Yeah.
That's exactly. And I'm not saying that's what happened, but that's exactly the way it looked.
But good win for Oxford. They needed that one. Parker with a good win over Woodlawn, 40-8. They just keep rolling. Pelham, as I mentioned earlier, they got their first region win of the year, 35-6 over Calera. They'll travel to Benjamin Russell Thursday night. This is one that everybody up in that area up there, Bo, had been looking forward to this one. Steve Smith returns to Piedmont last night. And Piedmont, I kept telling people, hey, Piedmont's going to figure it out this week. If there's one game that they're going to figure it out, it's going to be this weekend. I could see it kind of starting, doing their game with Anniston. They were starting to get rolling offensively. I know they only scored 9, but they hurt themselves a lot in that football game with penalties and turnovers and some other things. They didn't hurt themselves last night. They scored 35 points, and they get a big 35-19 win. And that had to feel great for Jonathan Miller, getting his second win now of the season. But B, just the pressure of beating Steve Smith, with him coming back to Piedmont and everything. That was a big win for them last night.
Massive win, man, for Jonathan Miller, because imagine the pressure before that ball was snapped. You're at home, they've been grumblings from the stands. Here you got this legend who just coached here is coming in with a team that's much improved, coming to burn the city down, so to speak, because make no mistake, Steve Smith went in there wanting to win that game, expecting to win that game. And for Jonathan Miller to get that W with Pinto being out, who's arguably one of his best playmakers, I don't think it's arguably, he is one of his best playmakers. That was a huge win for Jonathan Miller. And like you said, it like a pressure valve got released. I'm sure after that game could breathe, exhale, take a breath, enjoy this season, enjoy that win. Get everybody to calm down over there. It's been Chicken Little. Sky's been falling over there recently, so that's big time for them.
No doubt they needed that one last night. And going down looking at a couple of other of these games here real quick, Pinson Valley 61-0 over Huffman. Huffman has still not scored 1 point all season.
Jesus.
Yeah,
Caleb.
It's just crazy. Pisgah dominates Whitesburg Christian. Really no surprise there. They're just, they're looking ahead to Fife. I mean, you can't get caught and not play well next week, but that's the game that they have circled and the one that they're wanting and that they're really getting ready for. Pleasant Grove 37, John Carroll 12. That game was closer than the final score shows. John Carroll actually played Pleasant Grove pretty well last night. They're just going to have their work cut out for them when they face a team like a Pleasant Grove and like a Ramsey who has got some really good athletes to throw at them out there. And then you're going to have Winona and John Carroll as well coming up. And I'll be interested to see how that one goes after seeing Winona the other night as well. And then Randolph County 35, Sachs 14. I'm not sure Randolph County played great last night and still won by 21 points. And it's just been a tough year for Sachs. Not really what they were expecting or really what anybody else was expecting there. From Sachs this year with Coach Freeney in his first year. But if you stick with him, I can see, they're going to end up being pretty good. Reeltown dominates Lynette 50-7 last night. Rehoboth 30, Charles Henderson 27. That one is very surprising to me. It's been a tough year for Charles Henderson. They lost to Mary Montgomery 19-7. They played them very close. 7A, who we think could compete for 7A. And you thought, hey, Charles Henderson may be back, but they lost to Carroll and now lost to Rehoboth, and been a very up and down year for them. The defending runner-ups there in 5A.
Yeah, tough, man. After last year, very competitive in that state championship game. All eyes had to be focused on this year's state championship game because they lost some guys, but not as many as you'd think. And I kind of wish we had Corey there to break this one down because he knows them a little more in depth than you and I. But man, I was just kind of shocked by some of their losses this year. Just really shocked, honestly.
Saraland 59, Blunt 20. They keep rolling. Huge win for Sardis last night over Douglas, 35-21. BJ Brooks has come in and done a fantastic job in his first year at Sardis.
Hey, Caleb, they've been outscored 92-23 in 3 games in his seniors have to Douglas.
Wow. Well,
Coming
didn't
into
happen last night, I can tell you that. That was a big win for them. Speaking of another big win up in that area, how about Section 49, Eider 26? That one is very surprising to me.
Yeah, well, Riley Edwards' first win. I tried to get him on last night, but I don't know where they played the game at. If cell service was rough because they were 0 for coming into that game, and that was I know Tyler Dalton was probably not a happy camper, obviously, but man, that was a big win for Riley Edwards. A huge win for him actually to get his first win there at section.
Southside Gadsden 23 leads 13. Huge win there for Miles Hopen.
Dude, they were down to. They were so beat up across the front. They were starting kind of like guys that would. I'm not going to call them JV guys, but they were thin up front.
Yeah.
I mean, that was going to be the tell of the tape is defensively, could they hold up front? They've got 11 total guys injured Southside. That was a gut check win. I don't even think it's a question. The best win in Miles Hopen's career.
Yeah.
To get it there at home, statement win for him and those kids who's worked their tails off over there. And you got to be proud of them, man. I seen him in the gym yesterday. He was on the treadmill running with his headphones on. I was like, man, that dude's got to be listening to Rocky soundtrack right now. I don't think there's any question what he's listening to. But I talked to him briefly. I don't want to hold him up. I know he had to get to school, but best win of his career.
Big win for Spain Park last night over Tuscaloosa County. Put them in position to maybe get in and sneak into that 4 seed there in that region and be in the postseason, which would be very big for Coach Vakakis in his second year there at Spain Park. Spanish Fort got back on track, 35 points last night. They beat St. Paul's 35-6. Spring Garden got back on track, 51-23 over Talladega Central. They needed that game and needed to see some points go on the board. Big win for St. Clair County. They've not gotten many of them over the last couple of years, and Alexandria just continues to struggle as they fall 36-31 there to St. Clair County. It's been a weird year there at Alexandria, and hate it for Coach Yen and his coaching staff and what they're having to go through. It's been a tough season for them, and that was kind of their chance to get a win last night. They're staring at 0-10 right now, and it's not something that we're very used to seeing there at Alexandria at all. St. James gets a win over Alabama Christian, 42-20. St. James they were really good last year. I think you can tell they've lost a little bit this year. They're not near the level that they were last season. They had a really good group last year. Susan Moore just continues to roll though, Bo. Big win for them last night, 50-6 over Brindley Mountain. They did what they needed to do there with Brindley Mountain. There was a big game in 1A last night, Sweetwater against Linden, and Sweetwater wins that one 20-0. And so kind of a statement win for Sweetwater, and they may be one of the favorites to make it out of the South, and could be looking at a rematch of a couple years ago with Sweetwater and Wadley there in the 1A state championship on down the line when you look at how Wadley's played this year as well. Thomasville, very good win over Flomaton last night. Flomaton's got a good team, but if there was any doubt who the top team is in 7A Region 3, that was taken care of last night as Thompson really put it on Hewitt-Trussville, 40-14. We talked about all week. We thought this may be the time where Hewitt-Trussville could actually get Thompson and really change the landscape there. And you got to give credit to both Thompson and Phoenix City. We talked about both those. Hey, both these games are games that both these teams can lose, and they left no doubt with how they played last night.
Yeah, I think it's a blessing they lost that Clay game. Honestly,
yeah, I agree.
Releases pressure. Now, when he coaches in those coaches meetings, they're going to listen a little better.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to unite them. They don't have the pressure of this undefeated season. They didn't have to play ING. I think that was a blessing. I think things are falling into place for them to make a serious run again to a state championship game. Maybe even a blue map. I don't know. Central Phoenix looks like a handful right now, but you never know what could happen between now and then.
No, but those two are on a collision course. The only team, Auburn could obviously make some noise, but they're in a tough spot with their quarterback situation. I think Mary Montgomery's the only team that could really do anything. And then, Thompson's the favorites in the North now. Vestavia, I think, is the only team that can maybe beat them.
If the Cactus gets in as a 4 seed, I wouldn't want to play him.
No, you're right.
Spain Park, especially are they crossing with Huntsville again this year, or is that?
Yeah, it's the last year of that, and then we'll start flipping.
I wouldn't want to play him.
Yeah, I agree.
I wouldn't want to play him. Nope.
No, I agree. I think Austin's probably going to win that region up there, and that would not be a great matchup for Austin at all, taking on Spain Park. So, looking at some of these final scores here, UMS Wright over Alberta, 55-13. So good for Terry Curtis to kind of get back going with his group down there. They kind of had a rough year. Valley Head over Cedar Bluff, 44-20. Really good win there for Valley Head last night. Vestavia rolls over Chelsea, 45-21. Walter Welborn, 56. Childersburg, 28. And Walter Welborn's in firm position. They're going to play Randolph County here coming up. If they can win that one, that's pretty much going to seal up the region for them. And they seem to be right back there with a chance to go and compete in 3A again this year. And, they beat Davil 21-12, but Davil's got 2 losses that look pretty good so far this year. The way they played B.B. Comer, only losing 35-21, and then Walter Welborn, they held them to 21, got beat 21-12, because otherwise Walter Welborn they've scored points and just been kind of dominating people so far this year. So really good win there for Walter Welborn. Wetumpka over Stanhope, 56-42 last night. Not a lot of defense was played in that ball game. And then, you look on through a couple of these others right here. Woodland over Central Coosa, 38-13. Winfield over Tarrant, 52-6. And, just another week, Bo, wrapped up here and starting to really see a lot of these region standings play out. And we're going to have some big games, some region championship games here coming up over the next 2 weeks.
We are, buddy. And I'm going to tell you something, Caleb. It's getting a little cooler outside, my friend.
Yeah, it's starting to feel like football season.
Yeah, I don't know what it feels like. You're about an hour and 20 minutes south of me, but when I woke up this morning, the wind was blowing in the low 50s. Feels
Yeah.
fantastic. And these leaves start changing. I'll never forget this quote. This quote came from Coach Ginn Sr., Larry Ginn, Todd's dad. He said, if you're still playing football when the grass is dead, you've had a good season.
Yeah.
And that somebody needs to put that on a shirt somewhere, because I love that quote, and it means a lot to Todd Ginn, close, near and dear to his heart, about his father. But we're getting to where this grass is about to start dying off, and we're separating the men from boys, so to speak, Caleb.
Yep. And that's what, when I played for Coach Horn, he always stressed it. I want to be practicing on Thanksgiving. If we're practicing on Thanksgiving, we've had a good season this year. And that's what he wants to be practicing on Thanksgiving every single year. And it's the same thing as that. I mean, if you're playing when the grass is dead, you've had a great season.
He may be practicing on Thanksgiving this season, buddy.
Yeah, I think he's probably going to be practicing on Thanksgiving this year.
Yeah.
Way they've
Yeah.
been playing. So it's going to take a
Yeah.
big upset to knock them off. So
Tell you what,
that'll
Caleb,
wrap it up for us. Again,
I'm gonna make a promise with you, real
yeah.
quick. If they are practicing on Thanksgiving, we may need to shoot down there and see them that day. If you're in town,
yeah,
I'd like to make that trip.
Yeah, no,
Because
it's
they'll probably
fun.
go super early. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I got to do
Yeah.
it one time with them. We went down, we played Spanish Fort in the third round my junior year. And so we practiced on Thanksgiving that year. And that may have been the happiest that I ever saw him. He was so happy. He was like, hey, it's Thanksgiving and we're up here practicing football. Y'all with me. So, yeah, it's
Love it,
so.
dude.
But another great week of football. Like I said, make sure to tune in Thursday night. I'll have Benjamin Russell Pelham for the AHSAA TV game of the week down at Benjamin Russell. And then should be some fun games coming up. And we'll talk about them on Tuesday night, 7 o'clock, Road to the Blue Map. Make sure to tune in right here on Facebook and YouTube on the Average Joe Sports Talk page for Bo Starkey. I'm Caleb Brooks, and we will see you Tuesday night for Road to the Blue Map as we prepare for Week 7 of the 2023 AHSAA football season right here with